For those who are familiar with what's the technical name of the commitment?
Triangulation of Love.
The Triangulation of Love. So if you are a listener and you're able to like Google stuff, go into Google, type in the Triangulation of Love, hit images, and it should be a triangle. It has intimacy at the top, commitment in the lower right, and passion in the lower left. And what I really want to talk about here more than anything is intimacy. So on a 1 to 9 scale, 9 would be the top of the triangle, 1 would be the bottom. When you measure a couple, you don't aggregate their results. Each individual person keeps their results. And it is absolutely possible, if you're following what I'm saying, if you're looking at the picture, or if you're just otherwise not looking at a picture but trying to visualize, think of a line, that intimacy is a straight up and down line. Higher is better, lower is not better. Lower is very low.
Is worse.
It's bad. It's altogether possible to have one person in a couple, in a marriage, in a relationship, even a friendship or a parental to child relationship, where one person has a very high intimacy score, which means that they feel that they can bare their soul, they can expose themselves, they can be their true self around this other person, to this other person, they can tell them anything. That person's going to have a very high intimacy score because they feel fully accepted. Mm-hmm. And then the other person is like a 2 or a 3. They cannot, or at least they don't feel that they can bare their soul. This can often relate back to, in many cases, you'll find the man, not always, it's certainly possible that this is flip-flop. The woman would be high in intimacy, the man would be low. I feel that if you were to try and aggregate a lot of these and do some like metadata analysis, you'd probably find the majority of the cases where there's a high discrepancy in intimacy between a man and a woman, it's typically probably going to be the man much higher than the woman in most cases. And a lot of times this can relate back to men. We can be very opinionated about like what's good, what's bad, what brands, what sports teams, what cars are good. And to us, it does not compute that somebody else can have a different opinion. And especially early in marriages and relationships, we can then criticize the other person for having a different opinion. Something as simple as a preference for Coke or Pepsi, a preference between this sports team or that sports team. If you live down in Alabama and you have a couple where, one person roots for Auburn, the other roots for Bama, like they might need to just start their
fighting words.
Yeah, they might need to start their marital therapy, like just from the get-go. And so you're often left, you can also have a situation where early in the marriage, the first year or two, it is the case where the man is not accepting. And the woman may never recover from that. Even if he matures later on and becomes more accepting, she may not feel it, or because of all the rejection or criticism she faced in the first year or two of marriage, she still may not want to bare her soul. Years later, decade later, because she's like, nope. I remember 10 years ago when I said I like Pepsi and I got an earful for an hour over it. And I remember I would do stuff like this to you. Maybe not over drink preferences, but just random crap. If you screwed something up just a little bit, I'd go on for like an hour. And you would often point out, like, chill. I already said I'm sorry. I can't go back in time. And I would often be like, oh, yeah, it's true. I'd be like, all right, well, I want to rant for 30 more minutes, but I guess I'll not. So it's important when you are thinking of intimacy in terms of, can I bare my soul to this other person? Can I tell them anything about me and they accept me? Make sure that's a two-way street. And if your spouse, if you suspect that they may not be bearing themselves to you, I actually think you could probably go to them gently in conversation and say, hey, you know what? Am I like, am I blocking intimacy? If you, are you scared to bare yourself to me? Are you scared to tell me about yourself? And whatever I've done to cause you to feel like you can't do that, I'm truly sorry. I want you to know that I want to accept you. I want to accept all of you, just the way you are.
Yeah,
And I believe that conversation would probably go a long way.
for sure. It'd be a wise thing to do.
And it helps to have self-acceptance.
Yeah, for sure. And the self-acceptance when we can look at ourselves and instead, as women, a lot of times we'll look at ourselves and say, "Oh, if only this area of my body were skinnier or this area were bigger," instead of just looking at ourselves and loving and accepting our body for how it is, as an example.
For men, it's our calves.
It's your calves and biceps.
Our calves are not big enough.
Upper body strength, according to the body esteem scale. But like the more likely we are to see things within ourselves that should change, that's more likely to translate into how we see other people. And I notice this a lot with our daughter. So I've had to be really mindful as she gets older of noticing how I talk about myself, because she picks up on it. And I don't want her to think, oh, maybe I should, because she's heard me talk before about like needing, like, oh, I want to be on a diet or whatever. And then she started using those words. This was probably about a year ago. And I was like, no, you don't. But it makes you have to look inward and say, how am I showing those people around me that I can love and value and cherish myself? And that also helps us love and value and cherish others. If you enjoyed this clip from It Starts With Attraction, then click here to watch the full episode.